Welcome to Gumball Love. I'm Melissa Ledger, relationship enthusiast, blogger, broadcaster, and creator of Gumball Love. I dated Mr. Wrong over and over again until I finally discovered a pattern. I was dating Gumball guys. Sharing this revolutionary concept has created a movement happening all over the world. Your life is about to change because this levels the playing field. It gives you the lens that the most confident women have. You will see the red flags. You'll no longer fall in love with the wrong guy and spend weeks and months or years with someone who's just going to break your heart. You'll gain the confidence to get out of that toxic relationship, get through the breakup, and gain a perspective that gives you the closure you need. Most importantly, you will be happily single, creating the life you were always meant to live, and attract the right person in perfect timing. Welcome to Gumball Love. I'm so happy you're here.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited for this interview. This is with my very good friend, Elaine Zlaket. Elaine and I met about 4 years ago at a business conference. And 2 years ago, I was back in California and we had dinner. She was in a relationship at the time. And we had a conversation, which we're going to get into, that just a couple of, or maybe like a week ago, she said was a huge turning point. Like what we talked about in that conversation was a major turning point. And as that conversation progressed, I said, you know what, we need to do this on a podcast. And she was willing to share her story, which is very personal, which is awesome that she's willing to share. So I want to welcome Elaine. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Melissa.
Hello. All right. So I'm kind of a newbie at a podcast, so you guys will have to bear with us that, we feel really important. We have our headphones on. Elaine she's going to be doing a podcast soon. So just know that we may not sound professional, but we look professional. We have all the gear. I have all this fancy stuff now. So just know it all looks good. It may not sound perfect. It may not flow perfect. But thanks so much, Elaine, because this is really a big deal to share this publicly. And I know so many people will be so happy to hear that they're not alone, because I know so many people were in your situation and, or maybe are in your situation. And I asked you, just a couple minutes ago, like, would you say that your relationship was too good to leave, but too bad to stay? And you said yes. So can you give us just a little bit of an idea? Because I mean, when I saw you 2 years ago, maybe you should tell everybody like what happened and where you were, because I was just listening to you talk about where you were in your relationship. I had no idea that what I was saying was going to be so impactful. So can you kind of share like where you were in that moment?
Yes. You know what? I want to share that the person that I was in a relationship with is the father of my son. So I have an 8-year-old son. And so, as many of you that are listening might be, moms, I was in a situation where it wasn't an easy decision to just get out or to exit. They're partially because I had a child with this person. And there were fears there, but, I had been with this person for, beginning of 2003 is when we started to date. And then there was like a year and a half where we broke up, and then we rekindled and got back together. And Melissa, I'd say the last couple years of that relationship were just very tumultuous. There was a lot of struggle. And the relationship itself throughout all of those years was never really perfect, right? There was never really a time where I felt like, gosh, this is amazing. And then that feeling would stay for a long time. So we had our ups and downs, and we had actually broken up. Was it 2015 that we had our dinner,
Yep.
Melissa?
Yep.
Okay.
2015, 2 years ago.
2 years ago. So we had broken up for about in January of that year, sometime around then, 2015. And then we had decided we wanted to try one last time. And mind you, we were still living together. So that period of time that we were broken up, we were still living together.
which is unbelievable. Like, I can't even imagine. And I think, like, we had talked about this when we were deciding to do the podcast, that this is, we talk about Gumball guys a lot, but I think your situation where you had a more amicable situation where you could coexist, but then it was difficult and very awkward and hard, but you were able to coexist in the same home with also being broken up, which is unbelievable. I don't think very many people, I know I for sure couldn't do it. So, but knowing your situation, I can completely see how you could do it, just knowing you personally. But I think everybody else would be like, oh my gosh, how do you do it?
Well, it wasn't easy, right? And I think that that's common. We stay for different reasons. First and foremost, we had a financial situation. So, and you talk a lot about that, Melissa, about intertwining finances. We didn't have the same checking account, but, we live in Los Angeles. It's pretty pricey to live on your own here. And a lot of people here work 2-3 jobs. It's not uncommon just to survive. So, there was a financial reason that we stuck together aside from our child. And, I think for me personally, I can speak for myself. I was afraid for the family to break up, and the fear of not seeing my son every day and having to share time. So there were a lot of different layers there. So you do what you have to do, right? Mm-hmm. And we did the best that we could. And again, I think sometimes the situation is not so clear cut, not so black and white. You stay because you do love this person, but there's qualities in them that just don't work. They literally kill your soul. And that's kind of how I felt. I felt like I was slowly dying in that relationship and suffocating. And I needed to get out, but I physically could not get out. We were stuck in this situation. So anyways, but the love was still there, a little bit. And so when I had dinner with you, we had recently decided, I want to say it was like a month prior, to really just try to give it one more shot. And we were listening to marriage podcasts and, trying different things. And I remember sitting at dinner with you and feeling like, you had asked me how are you doing? How's everything going? And I just couldn't fake it. I think.
Well, you did fake it at first.
Well, I tried.
I called you out. Well, I mean, I don't think you were necessarily like, hey, I'm going to fake it. But me being my blunt self, you explained everything you were doing. We're going to counseling. We're listening to marriage podcasts. And you were like, I really don't remember exactly what you said, but I remember I just said, I don't believe you. Yeah. And then you were like, what do you mean you don't, what? And it was like, I don't believe that, it was like, I didn't believe that, it's like, I could tell your heart was in it, but you were so exhausted. That's what I was seeing. I was seeing someone doing all of the work. And it's like, hey, let's listen to this podcast. Hey, let's go to counseling. But I wasn't seeing somebody that was feeling like they had an equal partner, that you were really making progress. It just seemed like you were carrying the full burden. And I think that's what I said to you. I was like, you're doing all of the work and you're exhausted. And you looked great on the outside. But we can just tell when our friends are emotionally spent. And that's what I picked up on. So I was like, yeah, this all sounds good, but I don't believe it, because I think you're doing all the work.
Yeah, and that's what rang in my head when you said to me, you're doing all the work, aren't you? And it was just like, a piercing in my heart. Mm-hmm. And also, you could see me. I think sometimes we're living in our own world, and we're walking around and we're presenting something. But what's really going on the inside, you can't always see with people, especially social media. Mm-hmm. But, you could see what was really going on. So that dinner for me was a huge turning point, because, I just realized, gosh, it made me question and really look at things. Like, is this really something I want to be in? Do I want to be doing? And it wasn't to say that he wasn't doing any work. I truly believe he was doing the most that he is capable of doing. It just wasn't enough for me and for our situation.
Right.
And I think coming to that was more evident and more clear after that conversation. And I honestly we didn't go much longer after that. I think things happen for a reason. And for me, there's been pivotal times or different situations that have occurred, and I can't go back when those things have occurred. For example, I actually did EMDR therapy for 2 sessions.
And tell people what EMDR is. It's something desensitization of, what is it called? What does it mean?
I used light with the therapist that I went to, but I think there's tapping involved depending upon who you go to. But they basically work at the core beliefs, things that were developed. I think it's deep in your hippocampus. I don't know if I'm saying that correct, but deep when you are young, between 0 and 6, when your core beliefs are ingrained and they're subconsciously running you. So I had this belief that I wasn't worth it, like I wasn't valuable. And that was so deeply running me in my life, and I didn't even realize it. And so, I'd gone to a conference where I'd learned about EMDR therapy, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. I went to a couple sessions, but it shifted something in my body. After that, again, that was a huge pivotal moment. My situation, I could not be in my situation. It was very hard for me to be in it physically and mentally, obviously. But that's, after that, there were a lot of disagreements where it was like, get out of my house, and then it was like, it was really hard for us to share the same space. It wasn't a healthy situation.
Right. I was going to warn everybody, we both have dogs, and I should have said at the beginning, and then I was going to say, and wait for the siren. And hey, we have both. We have New York City siren, and we have my Shih Tzu poodle who is barking. So
adorable.
That's Emma, who everyone knows from Snapchat. Hey, come here. So sorry, #real life. So, okay. But what I was thinking is, how many people, as you're talking, I know that I have been in relationships where it's like the circumstances for all of us can be so different, but it's like you get to this place where, you're in your own, I don't want to say weird place, but it's like everyone's own weird place where you know the person, their habits, everything. And so it's like, why is it so hard to leave? But when you're in it, it's like you can't. Did you feel like even though all of those emotions were happening, you couldn't imagine not being with him? Like, how are you, like, go back to when you were at that dinner and then you go back home? Like, how did you get yourself to, how did you prepare to leave, I guess? Because we should fast forward. When did he finally move out? I can't remember. Was it a year ago?
No, January 15th of this year.
Okay.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, 6 months ago. So you spent the next year and a half with him. I'm sorry. No, it would have been, God, I cannot do math with years. So that would have been, was it a year and a half? A year-ish?
Yeah.
Because this is like the real stuff. You had to get yourself prepared financially.
Yes.
And because you can't just, a lot of people are in this situation. And it's easy for me to say, don't commingle your finances. But if you're already there, that's where you are. So you had to do a lot of things to prepare. And I talked about this in the Kara Labus podcast, Style Your Mind, how you kind of have to prepare an exit strategy. And sometimes that strategy is going to take you longer than it might take somebody else. It can't just like up and leave. So what was that like for you? We had dinner, you had that realization, I'm doing all the work. Like, what did you do from that point?
I knew I had to get a different job. At the time I was working in health and fitness. I was doing personal training and teaching group fitness, and it wasn't enough income to survive on my own. I was also doing like a multi-level marketing, at the same time. So I was doing a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And I knew I needed stability. So here's what happened. I after that dinner, I feel like it fizzled fast again after we decided, okay, we're going to try this one more time. You and I had the dinner, and it's like, you just can't lie to yourself. You know in your heart what is, And so I want to say January of 2016, I started my current job. So I'm in medical device sales, and I needed stability. I knew that I needed a stable income. I needed to make a certain amount of money so that I didn't need any money from him at all. I did not want to rely on him in any way.
Right.
And I also knew that I needed a schedule where I could drop my son off at school in the morning and be able to pick him up later in the day without relying on his dad at all. Now, his dad is a great dad, okay? So even though we had our issues, he's still very involved in our son's life. But I just knew I didn't want to have to rely on anybody. So I found, that was September that we had the dinner. So January 2016, I started the position that I'm in now. And I still, am in that job. And I still have my side business that I do, but I needed a stable income. And so that was the primary focus. That became my number one priority to get out.
Yeah. I remember it was not easy initially too. It was like, I remember you looking for jobs and getting frustrated in that search and then finding things. And then, like the struggle was real. And it's like I don't care what job you're in. I don't care if you're a top executive. It's not a quick thing to just switch a position and find something that's like it's a good fit, that pays well, all while you're trying to manage this other situation at home.
Yes. And that's the thing, you're interviewing, you go all the way to the president of the company. You got to interview with them. You have to put on this face, and there's all these things that are happening in your home. And, and it's hard. And it was hard to find a position. I had been out of the industry for a while. And I swore that if I ever got back into the industry, I wanted to do sell something that I believed in, that was doing good in some way. So again, I was also, not willing to take just any position. I wanted to find something that I was actually going to be happy doing. So there was that component. And then I took that job. It's now 2017. So fast forward, I literally had to, not only did I get the position, I had to build up enough commissions. So my base wasn't enough to live. Getting the job wasn't like, okay, you're done, I'm golden. I had to build up enough commissions to be able to support myself 100%. And he also had to get on his feet, so there was two things that were going on. So here we were again, another year of being under the same roof. And it was challenging. We had different parenting styles. We had different, obviously we didn't communicate well. If we communicated well, our relationship probably wouldn't have gone south so far, So there was a lot of disconnect. And then you're in this situation, you're trying to be the best parents that you can be. You're not 100% happy. So I guess the question is how do you evolve and grow, and what is the root of all this?
Well, wait a minute though. I think everybody listening is probably wanting to know, like, what were you going through? What was making it so difficult in the relationship? Like, and you don't have to, obviously it's 12 years. First of all, that's a long time to be with somebody. You were essentially married. You have a child together, and he was 5 at the time, right? Because he's 8. No, he was 6 at the time that this all started happening. So, you've got a child that's barely, out of kindergarten, first grade, and then you're making these major decisions in your mind. But what was it that, I guess, like, I always think of, what was it like in the very beginning? Did you have that intense beginning? And then did you notice the initial warning signs? What did you ignore? And then how did it get to the point, maybe in like a 30,000 foot version of, how did you get to that point?
We connected in the beginning. He lived 2 doors down from me in the apartment complex. I would see him walking by, And of course, there was a physical attraction. And, we would talk a lot. And so there was a connection, a deep connection there initially. And it was intense in the beginning, for sure. And I think sometimes you're blind in the beginning when it's so intense. And I was young, right? So I'm not young now. No, I'm kidding. I am going to be 39 in August. And so, I was young. If I could impart any wisdom on young ladies, it would be wait to get married until after 30. Because in your 20s, you are searching, you're figuring out who you are. And I know every situation is unique, but I did not know what I wanted in a husband. I was not clear, and I wasn't looking at it that way. I just thought, he's cute, this is fun, we have things in common, and there was this deep connection. I felt like, throughout my life, each boyfriend, it got better. But at the end, it wasn't, in the end, the situation was not exactly what I wanted. And as I got older, I got more and more clear about what that was. And so again, if you can wait, I just encourage young people to wait. Discover what you really want in a partner, because what you want in your 20s is not what you need in your 30s, especially when you have a family. Things change. So yes, there definitely there was a deep connection. There was intensity. But, prior to this, I pulled out my journals last night. I got to be honest. I wanted to kind of plug into, a long time ago when we first met. And I was so in love with him. So much more than I loved myself.
Ooh, that's a good one. You were in love with him more than you loved yourself.
And it's
why did you make that differentiator? I've never heard anyone say that. But it's kind of true, isn't it? We love them more than we love ourselves.
Well, I wasn't honoring myself. I wasn't clear about who I was. And I wasn't honoring myself because I was always so focused on the other person, and I would put them and their needs before my own. I was so loving.
I was just thinking about this, just as a side note. I was thinking about how focused I am on Gumball Love, and I also have a full-time job, and how I look at potential relationships now, and I think about what kind of a person would fit into that life, and what kind of a personality is going to work the best for me long term. After you've had a few relationships, you're like, yeah, that kind of personality doesn't work. And I stopped and I thought, man, I never used to think like this. I would meet a guy and then my work would suffer because I would be so focused on him that I would allow even obligations or proposals that needed to go out or whatever it was, I would start to slack because all of my focus would go into him. And that's true. We love them more than we love ourselves. So that's a very interesting way to put it.
It's so funny because even as you're talking about how work things would kind of fall to the side, I mean, friends would fall to the side.
Yeah.
It's like I had my girlfriends, we would talk maybe on the phone once a month but that person, that boyfriend became the primary focus. So there was definitely that intensity piece. There were also issues, as I was reading the journal, and it was like, I was never really completely happy in the beginning. There were issues that we argued about then, and some of the same things that we argued about all the way up until the very end.
Like what? What's one example of that? What did you argue about then that you still would today? That you want to say.
Yeah, no, I know. I was thinking about how do I want to say this. So I always felt like he was never really fully in. Like he was never really fully in, never really fully present with me and what my needs were, And so I always felt like I was so attentive to him, but that was never really reciprocated. And I always felt like there wasn't a lot of compassion. We came from totally different backgrounds. And so we argued a lot about how we were raised and, how we thought things should be executed and honestly how to do life. You know, like he slept in and would stay up till 2, 3 in the morning. And I was an early morning person, and that drove me crazy then. And that still drove me crazy. And it still drives me crazy now, you know? So there were things that were there. The red flags were there. I just was so enamored by him that I didn't look at them as make or breaks. Or for some reason, I just thought maybe they would evolve and change subconsciously over time, you know?
You know, I think everyone that's listening can relate to the guy not being as in, like when you're all in and you're just, you know, when I'm all in, I'm thinking about getting up and making them breakfast in the morning, or what, you know, things that they need, or surprising that, you know, like you want to make their lives easier, and you're just like, you and I are so similar, very thoughtful, and when someone doesn't reciprocate, not that they have to reciprocate exactly like you, but I remember one of my girlfriends saying, Melissa, I think if your, my boyfriend at the time, Bob, she was like, I think if Bob was even appreciative of what you do for him, that would even be enough to make you happy, but he doesn't reciprocate, nor does he appreciate. And there's something to be said for just kind of getting used to that. And
for sure.
And just, you know, letting that go.
Yes. And listen, obviously there are moments of reciprocity. Otherwise you wouldn't stay.
Right.
So it's not like, you know, you're staying and this person is giving absolutely nothing, right? There are moments of reciprocity for sure. And I think those are the little crumbs that make you stick around, but it's never really enough. And then you try to fight for yourself and what you're like wanting.
Yep.
And then you're made to feel crazy, right? Like what you're wanting or needing is crazy. And then you start to doubt yourself. And so over time, you lose yourself even more in the situation, you know? And
because when you're just trying to say what you want and you're made to feel crazy, then you constantly question what's valid. And even when you're asking for what you want, it's like painful to even ask, because the response is so, I don't know, what's the word? It's like the response is like not enthusiastic. You don't feel like they're receptive. You feel like they're just sitting there listening out of obligation. They're annoyed. And so even the act of just saying, hey, this is what I want, where you should be feeling like you can openly communicate and here's what I need, what are your needs? When you're even describing your needs, it feels like it's a chore for them to meet your needs.
Yeah. And there were times where, you know, it takes so much courage and bravery, I think, to stand up in a situation and express what you want and need, and then for the other person to sometimes react in a way that you don't expect. You know, I always envisioned compassion and love. And, you know, a lot of times it would just turn into this big argument about what he wants versus what I wanted. And who's, you know, for me, it was never about who's right and wrong. But I think for him, it was for a long time. I don't think it's that way now. But, you know, it was never about right and wrong. I just wanted to be seen. I just wanted to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And I never really felt like that really was happening. And then I realized that I was probably doing the same thing to him. You know, I think at some point, and this is kind of, you know, a twist on it, my soul was dying in that situation. I could never be my fullest potential in that situation. And I realized I too was doing the same to him. And so here we were slowly being destructive to each other.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the right fit. And because there was still love there, it was confusing and it was hard to completely let go. And then, you know, now we have this beautiful child. So,
but just to extend on that a little bit, sometimes I know that I got there with one individual in particular, and it helps you. It does help you make that exit, because when you look at them, like first you're fighting for the relationship and you're like, okay, can I do this? Can I not do this? But you making that recognition that your soul is dying and so is his. Sometimes, you know, you're a very selfless person. And so a recognition of I've got to do this for them, even though they might seem like the more selfish person or they're driving you crazy. I thought of that same thing. Like, I've got to leave him because I don't want to marry him. You know, like you're probably thinking that, like if he proposed, you wouldn't want to marry him. And what about the person he's supposed to be with? So sometimes that's helpful to just say, I'm selfish for staying with him if I know I'm not the right person for him, because he's certainly not the right person for me.
Yes. I think that's a huge, very mature epiphany to come to. And yes, that's
and it helps because then it doesn't have to be like you have to make this big decision and you have to leave them, but it's more of like, look, you're unhappy, I'm unhappy, and I know I'm not going to be what you need. And that I think that comes when you have a more of a sense of your own self-worth, for sure.
Well, and the other thing too, and I got to take a moment because this part is kind of hard to say, but you know, it was a hard realization to come to. Like, I think you feel like I'm not enough. You know, I'm not enough for him. But what you realize is that you are enough. You are beautiful and you are perfect just as you are. Mm-hmm. You both are enough. You're just not the right fit. And it is selfish to stay for everybody, including your child. Mm-hmm. You know, if you can't fight for yourself, fight for your child. Because who wants to be, you know, we've all been raised in dysfunction in some way. You know, let that be your source of fuel. Mm-hmm. You know, get your child out of that situation because they're the victim, you know? Mm-hmm. And so if you can't, you know, for me, having a child was a huge game changer. I think it strengthened me tremendously. And it really forced me to look at my patterns and myself and how, you know, I want to grow and be better. And so I do believe in all unhealthy situations, if you become aware and recognize that you are equally as responsible in some way. Just like you said, it's selfish to stay. Mm-hmm. You are equally responsible in some way, and you do have a choice to get out. Mm-hmm. That is empowering. And if you start doing the work to strengthen your soul, to strengthen your mind, one day you will be able to get out. And when we parted ways this year, you know, when we split up the first time when I was young and in my 20s, I was so depressed. I mean, I really was suicidal at one point. I mean, I thought I was reading a journal entry that said it was so painful to be in my own skin. And I wanted to die when I was younger when we broke up. And I was fearful that that was going to happen again. But what I realized is that in all those years of us being together, I grew. And honestly, there were things that I had learned from him that made me better. You know, how to stand up for myself, how to have a voice, you know, how to not be afraid to speak up even when it's not comfortable, how to believe in yourself. You know, no one else is going to believe in you unless you do. And so there were things that I've learned, values that I learned in all of those years, so that when we parted ways this year, you know, I thought I was fearful I was going to feel the same way, but I wasn't the same person that I was the first time we broke up in my 20s. I had evolved and my soul was stronger and I was more clear about what I wanted, and I knew it wasn't him, and that wasn't a bad thing. You know, it's okay. You have to give yourself permission to accept the situation for what it is. And that's okay. And so when we parted ways, I was okay. And I honestly, the last, you say, how do you live together? And under that, well, we did because we had to, and we didn't have a choice. And when it was the right time to evacuate or get out, it was, you know, we did it. But I mourned that relationship through that, you know, that year and a half. And there were many nights that I cried myself to sleep. And I feel like had it not happened that way, it would have triggered, you know, childhood baggage. And I probably would have gone into that deep depression that I had gone into in my 20s when we split up for that year and a half. So I think everything happens for a reason. And because it was a slow, we didn't rip the Band-Aid off. It was definitely like a slow, let's take this off slow.
And that's why I think your story is going to mean so much to so many people, because it's easy for people on the outside to say leave, but it's not that simple. For a lot of people, it's not that simple. There's children, there's some people have to go through the whole divorce, there's real estate assets, and then involving children in custody, and there's just so many things. So I think that a lot of the process gets overlooked, and you're really doing such a great job of describing the emotional growth and battles and ups and downs as you're going through it. And it's so huge to be able to say, like, I'm not the same person now as I was back then. I'm not going to take the breakup like I did back then. And also knowing that it is okay to end a relationship. I mean, it's like, how many relationships begin and end by famous people, by people that we respect and admire, and their marriages end for whatever reason, but when it happens to us, we feel like this giant failure, but it happens, and that's okay. I think just accepting the fact that, hey, it's perfectly fine, but I don't know what it is, but we feel like I'm a failure. I'm ending this. I couldn't make it work. What's wrong with me? But that recognition that you are enough, even if the relationship doesn't work, it doesn't change your worth and value. And man, that's a really tough thing to figure out. I think it takes a daily effort, especially for girls that have had experiences similar to yours or mine, where we didn't grow up with this sense of worth and value necessarily ingrained, or some girls that did have it got dismantled by a gumball guy relationship or a bad situation. So recognizing your worth this time around, and knowing that you had to mourn the loss, that's also huge too. I mean, I think some people think, well, if I'm done with the relationship, I should just be over him. And no, there is a mourning process as well. I mean, you had to go through all of those steps. And I remember, for those of you listening, Elaine and I are close friends. So I remember this whole process and thinking, man, she's amazing. Like, working so hard, and this happened day after day after day, where you had to hope for the commission and getting the new clients and going to all those appointments and finally getting what you needed, and just working so hard and staying so committed and being so dedicated to your son, and finally getting out of it and getting free. I mean, it's an incredible accomplishment. Just sheer accomplishment alone of all the hard work and effort you put into it. If you think of it, it's kind of like it's a labor of love for you, for your son. All of it was just the situation was not going to, wasn't going to produce any positive results over, I'm sure some, but you needed to get out of that situation, and you did.
Yeah, we both needed to. And one thing that helped me when we were living together was visualizing the closet on his side being empty, visualizing the space that we lived in being more open, and bright, and visualizing like the space with him not in it and being okay with that. And that to me represents so much, because that to me represented being okay by myself. And I think those mental exercises that I did with myself late at night when I was in bed, or, really helped me to prepare. But yes, it was a labor of love for all parties involved. I can still to this day say I love him as a person, and I just want him to be happy. And even now I visualize, I think people part ways and they get angry and they think about, I know every situation is not healthy, right? That when they part ways. But, you know, we think about them meeting somebody else and, you know, and all these horrible things. And I actually visualize him meeting someone else and being happy. And for myself too, because I want a healthy environment for our child, you know, and I care about him as a person. And I see, you know, Melissa, we joke about this, not joke, but we've talked about this. It's almost like sometimes these men are just wounded boys walking around in a man's body, and they need to heal, you know? And I think it's important to have compassion for the gumball guy, for, you know, and there's different, we talked about this too, there's varying degrees. There are some that are very extreme gumball guys. And there's some that are a little bit watered down version, but they have gumball tendencies, you know? And so, go ahead.
No, I'm just agreeing. Definitely. There are definitely varying degrees. And sometimes, like my last long-term relationship, he was more of a covert gumball guy, or his tendencies weren't as obvious. And it was, you know, as I've analyzed all of them, there's so many different ways that a relationship can be bad for you, but his ways were more subtle, so I didn't notice them as much. And then all of a sudden I would just feel bad, and I didn't know why. And I would feel sad. I wouldn't believe in myself. I couldn't get and I was actually birthing the whole idea of gumball love in that beginning of that relationship. And I just, with him in my life, I just couldn't light the fire, so to speak. It was like, I almost felt like I had to choose him or my dream. So, you know, one of my dreams was to be married, have children, have a family. But then I'd already been presented with what I felt was like my purpose. And those two together, I just couldn't make it work. And there it was, dangled in front of me, a house and, you know, everything that I thought I wanted. We were at the jewelry store, all those things. I've told that story like a million times, but it was, you know, standing there looking at a sparkling diamond ring and a potential of, you know, having a home, and here you had already had a child. It's like, I think, well, it's hard to walk away from, because to the outside, it looks normal and looks like you're happy. And it also feels like you look normal to everybody else. And then it's like, well, then you start asking yourself, like, how much better can it really be? But if you're honest with yourself, you feel beat down, you feel sad. And you had mentioned something, I wrote this down before our call, when you had downtime, even when you were broken up, because my ex and I, we would break up as well, and then we would get back together. But you said you were even unhappy and depressed when you were alone. And when you looked back in your journal.
Well, it was interesting. When I pulled out my journal, I started to, you know, thought, okay, I'm going to look at and see when Christian, not his real name, by the way, when Christian and I started dating. So, and then I realized, you know, I had gone from, 2000, I moved to Los Angeles. 2001, I dated a guy who was in the fitness industry. He cheated on me. I found out he was sleeping with like 7 girls. I mean, it was disgusting.
Oh my God.
Disgusting. Mm-hmm. And then 2002 to 2003, I dated another person who was a hairdresser and again, you know, cheated on me. And then after that, I met, you know, my ex, who I have my son with. And there were pockets of time in between those relationships, but bottom line, I really went from relationship to relationship. It wasn't very long in between those. And what I recognized was this pattern of, I was never really fully happy. I was always in a situation where they either cheated on me, and they were not emotionally invested in the relationship. And I was always longing for more. I was never really happy, and I would write how unhappy I was. And then in between those relationships, I was depressed. And I openly have shared that. You know, I struggled with depression in my 20s, and I would binge eat, and I would, you know, try all these different things to numb. And back then I smoked. I don't smoke anymore. Thank God. That was one good thing that came out of my last relationship. We broke up one time. He said he wouldn't stay with me if I continued to smoke. So there's a positive in all that.
There you go. Your lungs are better now.
Yes, I can breathe. No pun intended. But, you know, I look back at all the journal entries and I was just, oh, I miss so-and-so. I was always missing the ex, never really present in the moment, unhappy. And then I'd meet someone else and the cycle would start again. So I was never really fully happy. And that's why I encourage people to wait. You know, you're in a discovery phase in your 20s. You don't know who you are.
You got to wait until you're not feeling loneliness. Because I think so many people, they go from one to the next. I know I would, because I was feeling lonely, or feeling like I didn't look like everybody else. Or, you know, like you find all your friends that are in relationships or married or whatever, and it feels like, well, everybody else has got a boyfriend, and what's wrong with me? And, you know, then you're like, well, and then somebody announces they're engaged and you get married and you're like, geez, there's another one. And you're like, sit there and look on Facebook and Instagram and you're like, what's wrong with me? And it's like, why does there have to be something wrong? You know, it's like, it's unbelievable how we just beat ourselves up, because we would never say this to a friend, but we get these ideas. And so we get into that depression and we think that the relationship, this is where I feel like the cycle of Gumball guys is really about where you are emotionally when you meet them. And if you're a wounded duck, their tactics and how they treat you seem soothing. They seem nurturing. They seem like that intense romance. It's almost like a giant gumball, because it fills a major void temporarily. Like you felt lonely, you felt like there was nobody, and now there's this guy that's like, you know, schmoopy, lovey-dovey, and it's like, oh my God, I found my guy. And then that's like, I would announce, I met the one. Like my poor friends and family are like, probably like, really? She met the one again. Wow. This one's really it. You know, and then all of a sudden, like a month later, well, he's not really the one anymore. Yeah, or like 2 weeks. Some of it would be 2 weeks. Some of these Gumball guys have very fast cycles. They burn through that schmoopy quick, but others don't. Or it's a much more gradual, it's like a more gradual decline. And that's, to me, those are probably the worst ones, is you don't notice them and then you end up dating them for 2 years or 3 years or whatever. And then you realize it, and then you're so invested, which is the whole point of my platform, is to help women not get invested, figure this stuff out, or know what to see. Even if you are depressed, even if you are lonely, that's my whole goal of this, is to help people see it. Even if they're feeling like the wounded duck, they can still recognize the wolf and know that he's bad, and they need to heal. So, and I have to commend you. You have not jumped into another relationship. You've been doing all kinds of things, building products, building your career, taking care of your son. I mean, you're like the picture of, you know, the picture perfect example. No pun intended for your product. But it's true. It's like picture perfect of what we need to do. This time you're taking care of yourself.
Well, I think there's a couple things, you know, in what you just said, there were so many things that struck a chord with me, but one is I'm happier now than I've ever been. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you're unhealthy attracts unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So you're attracting this person, but you have to at some point take a look at, why are you attracting this type of person? What void are they filling in your life? And a girlfriend of mine recently asked me, it was actually she and her husband, we were having a deep conversation, and they said, what do you think the answer is to staying happy? And I said, filling your own cup. Mm-hmm. Learning how to fill your own cup and keep it full.
Yes.
You're not looking for someone else to, you know, fill the last 50%, because then you're putting a huge burden on them to carry, first of all. Mm-hmm. And second, then you're really not clear about what you want and what makes you happy. And so right now, you know, I don't know if this is healthy, because I need to take a look at this, but I'm actually feeling the opposite. Like I have no desire to be with anybody. I am so happy. I love my space. I do not want to give up any of that time and space into someone else. And I definitely, what I've done is I've really started to come from a place of gratitude daily. So I acknowledge every day I have a roof over my head. I can afford taking care of myself and my son. I focus on the positives in my life. I'm not perfect. No one is. And then the other thing is, I think we're all designed to serve in some way. So I'm not getting caught up in the old negative thought patterns because I've learned how to not let that bring me down or paralyze me. And I start focusing outward. How can I serve? How can I help other people? And that kind of keeps me in a happy space. But I've also learned to accept the things about myself that are flawed as well as the things that are fabulous and being okay with that. And if I do meet somebody, I have literally written down the qualities that I want in that person so that I'm not wasting time. And I can tell, utilizing your tips on what the red flags are, of Gumball guys. And trust me, they're popping up left and right. Unhealthy attracts unhealthy. But when you are healthy or when you're achieving or striving, because I don't think that you ever really 100% achieve that. I think it's, you're on this journey. When you're happy and you're more whole, you ideally will eventually attract that. But sometimes the unhealthy people like to come and try to get on the journey with you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think you are going to attract unhealthy relationships when you're unhealthy, but when you are healthy, you're still going to get, it's just like a famous person. Everybody wants to be around them. Everyone wants a part of their energy because they have achieved a high amount of success and people stand around them and they just stare at them. So they're attracting everyone. And I think like when you go on online dating, people are, girls will say, how am I attracting all these people? Like, you're going to attract them. There's always going to be the shirtless guy that's like, hey, what's up? He's never going to go away. So it's how you respond or how you don't respond to those that really matter. But one thing you were saying, I just want to make sure that I caught this, is that enjoying your own space and enjoying being single. I think for so many of us that have been in a Gumball guy relationship or a relationship that really robbed us of our identity or we allowed them to rob us, you got to take responsibility of it. But you get so caught up in it that you don't even know who you are. So you're enjoying your own space, your own time. And I enjoy that as well. I think it's highly underestimated of how crazy enjoyable single life can be. And yeah, you have moments where you're like, oh, it'd be nice. Sometimes when I'm get home, like, man, it'd be nice if somebody else had walked the dogs right now. Or it would be really nice to have somebody who knows how to mount a flat screen TV and put that crown molding thing to hide the cords. I'm always like, man, I do not know how to do that. And I'm never going to learn.
Hire somebody.
Yeah,
pay them.
Yes. But it's like, there's things where, yes, there are things that are better. I think it's ultimately would be the ideal to have the right person in your life. But when you build your life single to a place that you really truly enjoy, it's like letting a rat in your apartment if it's the wrong guy. And it's like, you're like on a date with him going, there is no way that you're going to be sitting in my living room like ever, because you build that to a precious point. It's like when you really take the time to do what you've been doing, you put a value on that and it's big. But that's when as you were talking, I was trying to think of like, you were like, I don't want to let anybody else in. I was trying to think of like, what are two things that kind of, I imagined, things ascending, like, when a plane takes off, it's kind of like this is not really the best example, but it's the only one I can think of. If you think of like a plane, there's a big roar when it takes off. There's a lot of work that it takes to get off the ground, and then it rises, and then it's kind of bumpy, and you get to that 10,000 feet. It's like, okay, now I can use my computer or whatever, but it's still like not. And then you get to that cruising altitude and you're like, okay, I can get up and I'm free to move about the cabin, which is one of my favorite terms. But then it's like at that altitude, when you meet somebody else that's also at that same cruising altitude, I think that's when you're going to know it's your equal, because they're not going to be all the people that I know in healthy relationships. It's like you're going to meet a person that's also created that kind of a life for themselves. They also have a high value on their life, their lifestyle, their friends, their relationships. And when you work hard on that, it's going to look even more valuable to the person that you actually would want to be with, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I think it's, when I was in therapy, they would call that interdependence, not codependence. So you're two independent people, very driven, happy, and you complement each other's lives. You're not filling the cup, if you will, or filling the void. Your cups are full, both of them, and you toast.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
What a perfect visual. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're celebrating. And it's not, I always felt like in previous relationships at different times, someone said this analogy, I was running with a weighted vest on, and then it had like this chain and then this, weighted ball. And it was like I was always going uphill with this. It's like you don't want to feel that way. And I think that in order, healthy attracts healthy in this sense, like you want to be cruising at that altitude, and you want someone who's cruising at that altitude sitting first class with you. It's like you want to be your full self and free, and you have to create that to attract that. Otherwise you're going to continue to attract the same. So there's that, I think, that depth to it. You gotta, and that's one thing that I do want to say, there is hope. Like you can be in an unhealthy situation, and you must build your soul muscle. You must work on yourself, because you need to get strong to get out. And once you're out,
so tell me like 3 things you did. I love that. Build your soul muscle. What are some things? Let's say that somebody's in a more difficult situation than you are, or the same situation. Like, what would you say to someone that's like, Elaine, I hear you, but I don't know if I can do what you did. What would you tell them? What would be your like go-to top 3 things?
First of all, I'd say find help, like a therapist or someone that you can speak to professionally. If you don't have the money for that, there's plenty of podcasts out there that are free that you can listen to. And movement, I think, is super important. I remember my therapist saying, get up and walk around. Move, get out and go for walks. And I would go on 30-minute walks and put in a podcast, feed your mind, move your body. And I would develop a strong, it doesn't have to be a network, like 1 or 2 people that you can lean on, to talk to. And I don't mean just talk to you about the negative things. I mean, really share what's going on, and create support. I think you need to have support. And I think you talked about that recently in something. Maybe it was the podcast that I listened to where you were interviewed, but creating support in some way. So move your body, feed your mind, and create a support network around you. Because I had that. I had my best friend who, through all of this, she was there for me. And she would always say, Elaine, when you're ready, you'll know. And I'm here for you either way. I mean, sometimes it's really hard to be friends with someone when they're doing this back and forth dance. And you're get out, and get the F out.
It is. And some people, I mean, everybody's different. I think like with you, you were very mature about it, and you had a very specific situation. But yeah, you don't want somebody who, I think it's hard if they have an emotional attachment to the guy, to A lot of times I see people going through this and then they're like talking to his mom or something. Well, I talked to his mom. It's like, dude, you can't talk to his mom when you're trying to leave his son or her son. It's like, don't go to his mom. But a lot of girls do that. They want to go to the mom or some relative of his because it's like they're looking for permission to leave the guy and they want that validation, and it can't come from that. You got to go to people that are maybe outside the situation a little bit. And I'm a big proponent of keeping that somewhat secret so that they don't go, oh, you're going to go whine to so-and-so now. Cause they'll use that like, oh, I bet you're going to go to, like, it would be my sister in that case. Like so many guys, oh, you're going to go tell your sister all about it. Your sister's so blah, blah, blah. And then I know she's going to say it. And then they'd start predicting what my sister would say. And then that would piss me off. And so it would just be, then my healing process and my support system would be tainted. And that's important to keep that protected. So, choose somebody, and a therapist too. Even if you go to if you have a church, you can go to a pastor.
They sometimes have free therapy at churches.
Yeah, they have free therapy at churches, or they have, if you go to colleges, universities, there's student therapists that are well along in getting sometimes their PhDs, but they still need practice hours. And there's a ton of resources for inexpensive therapy. And I'm telling you what, if you look at what you're spending money on, like when I look back and look at what I spent on therapy, I would cancel cable and go to a track phone if I had to. Like, knowing the value of it, maybe not a track phone. I don't think I would ever really do that. Sorry, Dr. Stormberg, but I'm going to choose my iPhone over you. No, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I would definitely for sure cancel cable for therapy, or really think about, are you on, Nordstrom.com and you're going to spend how much, and you could, therapy, peace of mind is so critical. And so, yeah, I think that your support system is really key, but also, like you said, therapy helps build you up. So you're not relying on your support system completely for support, if that makes sense. Like, yes, they're there to support you, but they're not there to carry you.
They're not your crutch.
Yeah, they're not your crutch, but you do need them. You need somebody to say, and work this out. And then journaling. I mean, journaling to me is magical. It's
yeah, I think journaling is magical, but I think what you journal is powerful too, because when I was looking at my journals, Melissa, it was like the same things. Like, I was stuck. And I think Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. It's like you're addicted to a certain feeling and you don't realize it. And then you're repeating the same thoughts over and over and over again in different ways, but pretty much saying the same thing. So what are you journaling about? Like, I seriously, every journal entry started off, I'm feeling so sad. Okay. Why are you feeling so sad? You're alive.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, you have this gift. It's like, I wanted to take my younger self and just go, what the heck did you do for the last 15 years? Like, you wasted time, So journaling, I think, is powerful, but how you journal is really powerful too, Yeah,
that's a good point, because we can just do a pity party journal entry and then we kind of defeat the purpose. But I think too, I'm a big talker, and a lot of times, and my mom will listen to me forever about anything, including like how I'm organizing my linen closet. I mean, my mom will listen to me for everything, and I love that about her. But sometimes it's like, I need to be like, you know what? Why don't you just write this stuff down? And what do you really need to work through? Even when I'm not in a relationship, I journal all the time. I'm always opening up a new document. Okay, what's going through my mind right now? What do I need to focus on? And sometimes we pick up the phone and we call somebody, and my poor mom, she's like, okay, basically you just gave me your to-do list. She never says that ever, but like sometimes like you get in habits of relying on other people instead of figuring out a way that you can be a little bit more self-sufficient and these are the things that I feel like as we do these, we become higher and higher, more and more valuable to a higher quality man. Because I think that we get so focused on the Gumball guy sometimes that we don't really see who these high quality men are. And so maybe we can kind of like wrap this. Is where I think we're like at an hour right now. So I want to kind of wrap this up, but like to end on a message of hope, like there are really high quality men out there, and the journey that you're on when you're single and you are developing maybe for the first time who you are, what you like, what you don't like, enjoying your space and living in that life, not just creating it and putting furniture around and being like, okay, I lit my candle, I'm in my good life, but like really living it and experiencing it, and to where it gets to be second nature to you. Because a man who may have also worked that hard, or maybe it just all comes naturally to him. He could have grown up in a great, healthy situation where these concepts will be foreign to him, but that's just how he lives normally. Seeing a woman that's his equal and that has those skills and can be independent. Maybe he's got a job that requires him to be in the public eye, or he travels a lot. He needs somebody that he can count on to take care of the kids when he goes out of town. Like when you bring, I'm independent, I'm self-sufficient, I can work through my own problems, and they experience that as they're with you. When you start like kind of thinking of yourself as I'm building an incredible, I'm building myself up to what my best self, and that is not only valuable to you, but that's going to make you more valuable to somebody else. I think I used to always get stuck like I don't have anyone, instead of like who do I really want to be? And that's the version of me that I want somebody else to say, wow, that's incredible, because then you feel confident in and of yourself. You're a whole person meeting another whole person.
That's valuable. That's deep.
It is deep, I know. But I was just thinking about how hard you've worked in the last year and a half to almost going on 2 years. And you done good, girl. You really did. I mean, I've had so much respect for you going through this journey and having a child in the process and being so careful with their heart. And I can say just from an outsider, like I have never noticed your son to be anything but a happy kid and goofy. And we always send each other goofy Snapchat filters. I bonded with Jaden because I would talk about poop, and of course he didn't know how to talk to me on FaceTime. If you want to bond with a 6-year-old, just talk about poop and you'll be their friend forever. But yeah, I've never known him to be anything but a happy kid, and I know he went through a big transition, but I don't think you could have done it any better and any more smoothly. And you made the best of your situation, and now you're free.
Thank you. I do. I feel free. It feels good. Girl, it feels good.
Feels good.
No, thank you so much. And, I hope that I wanted to share all this. I was nervous because I'm sharing very personal stuff and I have a child involved, but I wanted to give hope to other women out there. Just if you're in an unhealthy situation, start working on yourself and get stronger. And one day you won't fit in that situation anymore. And you will evolve. It's like, I was cleaning out my closet after everything has taken place, and I've put on a little bit of weight, and my, size 2 pants don't fit me anymore.
Yeah, my size 2 pants don't fit me anymore. Weird. A couple sizes bigger than 2.
Oh my God. No. So, instead of hanging on to those and trying to, set a goal, one day I want to fit back into them, I was like, I'm getting rid of these. And right where I'm at, I'm good. And down the road, if my size changes, then I'll deal with it then. It's like you grow and you evolve. You don't fit in that situation anymore. And it's not perfect now. And it's a journey. But what I will say is you only have one life, and time is a gift. So don't waste it. And you're here to serve in some way. So tap into whatever that is. And you will feel more fulfilled and more happy than you ever could have imagined if you stay that course and if you honor your heart.
Amen, sister.
Woo-hoo.
That is a great note to end on. So I know that we didn't talk at all about your business, but if anyone wants to get a hold of you, can you tell them how they'd get a hold of you and what you're excited about right now, and just tell them where to find you on social media?
Sure. I am a photo shoot coach to entrepreneurs, and my passion is to teach women how to feel confident in front of the camera, but the real work happens before they get in front of the camera. So how ironic is that? But you can find me at ElaineZlaket.com. My Facebook and my Instagram are also Elaine Zlaket. So just by my name, you can find me there.
Okay, and spell your name. Just make sure everyone gets it correct.
Oh, yeah, because that's a tough one.
Yes.
So Elaine is Elaine. The last name is tricky. It's Z like zebra, L like Larry, A like apple, K like kitten, E, T like Tom.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elaine. It means so much to me, and I know everyone listening, to hear this kind of a story, because you got to get into the tender things to really, we can't help people by staying on the surface. So I appreciate you going deep and being so thoughtful. And now you guys can all see why I love Elaine and why we're friends, and how much respect I have for you in this journey. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story.
Oh, Melissa, thank you. I'm so honored. I am grateful. And you know what? Your message is going to help so many and is already helping so many women. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to share and help in any way that I can. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, can you do me a quick favor and leave a review? I want to know exactly how this resonated with you and any aha moments you had. Also, your review helps the success of this show, and it will put it on the radar of someone that may never have heard of it otherwise. If you would like more information or a private coaching session, visit gumballlove.com or send me an email, melissa@gumballlove.com. Remember, focus on creating your best life. Spend time only with those who treasure and cherish you, and know that you have already arrived at being enough. I'll leave you with my favorite quote by Henry David Thoreau. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams and live the life you have imagined. Until next time, I love you so much, and I'll see you soon.